Hello guys, how are you?
I'm Hardeep Singh. Welcome back to your own YouTube channel. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing test topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you got guesswork. Please, guys, participate in everyday listening and reading practice test to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Press the bell icon for the upcoming notifications. Don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page, IELTS updates and recent exams.
Part 1. You will hear a young man phoning a town's youth council. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 5. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 5.
Good morning, Youth Council. Caroline speaking.
Oh, hello. I'm interested in standing for election to the Youth Council, and I was told to give you a call.
That's good. Could I have your name, please?
Yes, it's Roger Brown.
Thank you. I'm Caroline, the Youth Council Administrator. So, do you know much about what the council does, Roger?
I've talked to Stephanie. I think she's the chair of the council.
That's right.
And she told me a lot about it. How it's a way for young people to discuss local issues, for example, and make suggestions to the town council. That's what made me interested.
Fine. Well, let me take down some of your details. First of all, how old are you? You know the council is for young people aged from 13 to 18.
I've just turned 18.
And where do you live, Roger?
Well, that's a bit complicated. At the moment, I'm looking for a flat to rent here, so I'm in a hostel from Monday to Friday. I go back to my parents' place at the weekend.
Okay, so where's the best place to send you some information about the council?
Oh, to my parents' address, please. That's 17 Buckley Street, Buckleigh Street, Stamford, Lincolnshire, though you don't really need the county.
Oh, I know Stamford. It's a lovely town. And what's the postcode?
PE9 7QT.
Right, thank you. So are you working here or are you a student?
I started studying at the university a couple of weeks ago, and I've got a part-time job for a few hours a week.
What do you do?
Well, I've done several different things. I've just finished a short-term contract as a courier, and now I'm working as a waiter in one of the big hotels.
Uh-huh. That can't leave you much time for studying.
Oh, it's not too bad. I managed to fit it all in.
What are you studying?
My ambition is to go into Parliament eventually, so my major subject is politics. That's partly why I think the Youth Council is important and want to be a part of it.
And I suppose you're also taking a minor subject, aren't you? I know a lot of people study economics too.
I chose history. To be honest, I'm not finding it as interesting as I expected.
Before you hear the rest of the phone call, you have some time to look at questions 6 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 6 to 10.
Okay, so with your studying and your part-time job, do you have time for any other interests or hobbies?
Well, I spend quite a lot of time cycling, both around town to get to university and to work, and also long distance, from here to London, for instance.
That's pretty impressive. Anything else?
For relaxation, I'm also keen on the cinema. I used to go at least once a week, but I can't manage to go so often now.
Right. Are you sure you'll have enough time for the Youth Council?
Yes, I've worked out that I can afford to reduce my hours at work, and that will make the time.
So is there any particular aspect of the Youth Council's work that appeals to you, Roger?
Well, my sister is blind, so I'm particularly interested in working with disabled young people to try and improve the quality of their lives.
That's great. Well, the best way to get involved is to be nominated by some people who you know.
Right. Can you tell me how to set about organising that?
You should talk to Jeffrey, our elections officer. I can arrange a meeting in the council office with him, if you like.
Yes, please.
He'll be here next Monday, if that suits you.
That's the 14th, isn't it?
Yes.
I can manage late afternoon.
Would you like to suggest a time? He generally leaves around 5:30.
Well, would 4:30 be okay? My last class finishes at 4, so I'd have plenty of time to get to your office.
Right, that's fine. Oh, and could I have a phone number we can contact you on?
Yes, my mobile number's 07788 136 711.
Thank you. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
You will hear a woman who works in a theatre talking to 2 new staff members on their first day of work. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hi, great to see you. I'm Jodie, and I'll be looking after both of you for the first month you're working here at the Amersham Theatre. I'll tell you something about the theatre now, then take you to meet 2 of the other staff. It's an old building, and it's been modernised several times. In fact, as you can see, we're carrying out a major refurbishment at the moment. The interior has just been repainted, and we're about to start on the exterior of the building. That'll be a big job. The work's running over budget, so we've had to postpone installing an elevator. I hope you're happy running up and down stairs. When the theatre was built, people were generally slimmer and shorter than now, and the seats were very close together. We've replaced them with larger seats, with more legroom. This means fewer seats in total, but we've taken the opportunity to install seats that can easily be moved to create different acting spaces. We've also turned a few storerooms over to other purposes, like using them for meetings. We try hard to involve members of the public in the theatre. One way is by organising backstage tours, so people can be shown round the building and learn how a theatre operates. These are proving very popular. What we're finding is that people want to have lunch or a cup of coffee while they're here. so we're looking into the possibility of opening a cafe in due course. We have a bookshop which specialises in books about drama, and that attracts plenty of customers. Then there are 2 large rooms that will be decorated next month, and they'll be available for hire, for conferences and private functions, such as parties. We're also considering hiring out costumes to amateur drama clubs. Now I want to tell you about our workshops. We recently started a programme of workshops that anyone can join. Eventually, we intend to run courses in acting, but we're waiting until we've got the right people in place as trainers. That's proving more difficult than we'd expected. There's a big demand to learn about the technical side of putting on a production, and our lighting workshop has already started with great success. We're going to start one on sound next month. A number of people have inquired about workshops on makeup, and that's something we're considering for the future. A surprise success is the workshop on making puppets. We happen to have someone working here who does it as a hobby, and she offered to run a workshop. It was so popular, we're now running them every month.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
Now, a word about the layout of the building. The auditorium, stage and dressing rooms for the actors are all below ground level. Here on the ground floor, we have most of the rooms that the public doesn't see. The majority are internal, so they have windows in the roof to light them. Standing here in the foyer, you're probably wondering why the box office isn't here, where the public would expect to find it. Well, you might have noticed it on your way in. Although it's part of this building, it's next door, with a separate entrance from the road. For the theatre manager's office, you go across the foyer and through the double doors. Turn right, and it's the room at the end of the corridor, with the door on the left. The lighting box is where the computerized stage lighting is operated, and it's at the back of the building. When you're through the double doors, turn left, turn right at the water cooler, and right again at the end. It's the second room along that corridor. The lighting box has a window into the auditorium, which of course is below us. The artistic director's office is through the double doors, turn right, and it's the first room you come to on the right-hand side. And finally, for the moment, the room where I'll take you next, the relaxation room. So, if you'd like to come with me...
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
You will hear 2 marketing students, Maggie and Mike, talking to their teacher about a seminar presentation that they are preparing. First, you had some time to look at questions 21 to 24. Now listen and answer questions 21 to 24.
So, you two are going to give a presentation next week about the beauty industry, aren't you?
Yeah, we've divided it into two sections. First we'll be looking at the place of the beauty industry in the economy.
Yeah, and then we were going to look at what drives it, as well as some recent trends.
That sounds like a good way of doing it. OK, Mike, how are you going to be starting off?
Well, first we were amazed at the size of the industry. It's measured in billions, not millions. It's worth $160 billion a year globally.
That figure includes products for hair care. They're worth $38 billion alone. Then there's makeup and perfume. I think that's $15 billion. Plus cosmetic surgery, skincare products, diet pills and health clubs.
In America, more money is spent on beauty than on education.
Really?
Yeah. The profits of the leading company in the industry have been growing by 14% a year for the last 13 years. And the industry as a whole has been growing at a rate of 7% a year. In India, sales of anti-aging creams are growing by 40% a year. And you know the Avon ladies? Well, there are 900,000 of them in Brazil, which is more than the number of people in its navy and army.
Amazing. Now, just going back a bit, you mentioned cosmetic surgery. Do you have any data on that?
Yeah. It's worth $20 billion a year now, and the number of procedures they do in the US has jumped by more than 220% since 1997. Botox injections to remove wrinkles are the main thing done these days, but nose jobs and fat removal are still very common. And there's been a real boom in teeth whitening. Also, because the cost of cosmetic surgery has really come down, a lot more people can afford it now.
And do you know much about the history of the industry?
Well, the modern beauty industry really started up about 100 years ago. When photography became widespread, it became much easier for the public to see idealised standards of beauty, and people wanted to buy the products to make themselves look like the models they saw in magazines. By the middle of the century, scientific advances led to changes in the ingredients used in many cosmetics, which made them more affordable, and packaging made them more attractive.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 25 to 30.
Now, in the second part of your presentation, you're going to be looking at why people buy the products.
Yes, that's right. This area is a bit more subjective, and Mike and I disagreed on a few matters.
Well, marketing is a hit and miss affair, and it's true what they say, that only half of any marketing budget achieves the desired result.
I think that's an exaggeration, don't you? Anyway, there are powerful forces at work in the beauty industry because when it comes down to it, there's no avoiding the fact that it's all about image and that this industry is so successful because it preys on people's hopes and fears.
Oh, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? It's only natural to try to look your best.
Well, the guy who founded Revlon called the whole business hope in a jar.
Did he? Well, that's a nice way of putting it.
We found a British study of 11,000 people which concluded that people who are less attractive earn less money.
And that was the case no matter whether they worked as secretaries, in sales or as executives.
And why do you think that's the case?
Well, I reckon one reason is because attractive people have higher expectations and are less willing to put up with being treated badly.
Yeah, but there are plenty of good-looking people with low self-esteem who do let others walk all over them. I think what it comes down to is that people in general treat good-looking people well, And it starts young. Even 3-month-old babies smile longer at faces that adults find attractive.
So, who judges what's beautiful and what isn't?
We didn't really go into that, but it seems that perceptions of beauty are connected to health and fertility. In some places, people go for shiny hair. In other cultures, women use mascara to make their eyes look bigger and to give themselves a younger look. But a universal indicator of being young and healthy is to have clear skin.
And that's why so much money is made from skin cleansers, moisturisers, facial creams and so on.
Well, there are certainly plenty of tricks to this trade.
Yeah, and most of them aren't new tricks at all. I think I could make a link at this part of the presentation to what Mike was saying about the early 20th century, because there's a trend now in the beauty industry to go back to the approach they had a century ago, when they stressed a connection between beauty and health. They got women to have facials and do exercise classes. Now they aim at beauty, but also like people to be fit, not just thin.
Oh, come on. The industry just scares people into going on diets that can actually harm them. And most of those thin models aren't in good physical condition. They're just hungry.
You can't tell just by looking. Anyway, I'm not denying that image is important. In fact, beauty firms spend up to 25% of their turnover on advertising.
That's incredible.
Isn't it? And they put just 2 or 3% into research and development. By comparison, in the pharmaceutical industry, 15% of sales goes into research and development.
Well, it sounds like you've got the topic well covered. I'm sure the class will really enjoy your presentation.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
You will hear a talk by an archaeological scientist on her latest research. First, you had some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Many of you may remember that in 1991, a couple who were hiking high in the mountains on the border between Italy and Austria found the body of a man who had died 5,300 years ago. This corpse was later given the nickname the Iceman. Fortunately, a complete set of clothes and a variety of gear were found on or near the corpse, and these give us further clues as to his identity. Today, I'd like to speak to you about some of the latest findings on the Iceman. Scientists have learned from the Iceman's corpse in the same way as detectives investigating a murder gather clues from the victim's body. The study of the Iceman's bones shows that he was 46 years old at the time of death, which is relatively old for people at that time. It appears that he belonged to a group from central northern Europe rather than to the group of people who lived not far to the south of the spot where his body was found. Yet it seems he may have moved around somewhat during his life. Although exactly where he spent his life is unknown, investigation of his tooth enamel suggests that he grew up in one place and then spent several decades in another area. Samples taken from his stomach and intestines give us an indication of what he'd eaten shortly before his death, including grains, though this does not allow conclusions to be drawn as to what he usually ate. However, samples of his hair show that his usual diet consisted of plants and the meat of several animals. Living in a time long before the development of modern medicine, the tattoos on his back may indicate acupuncture points, yet on the other hand they could simply be a form of body decoration. It seems that he was not in a good state of health in the last 6 months of his life. There are 3 lines, known as Bowes lines, on the single fingernail that was found. These lines occur if the nail stops growing due to illness and then starts growing again. It was initially assumed that he died of the cold in autumn because of the presence of a piece of fruit that ripens in late summer. Yet there is now strong botanical evidence that he died in spring. This is because pollen of the hop hornbeam tree was found in his intestines, and that small tree blooms only in late spring. So he may have breathed some in or drunk some water containing the pollen shortly before his death. So what else do we know about the Iceman? He ate a primitive form of wheat, which was baked into bread on an open fire. Although leaves of moss were found in his intestines, it appears that moss was not part of his diet, but had probably entered his mouth by accident. In those days, the local people had no paper bags or plastic wrapping, and so used moss to pack food in. Moss was a very versatile plant, with different varieties that grew far to the north, being used by the Vikings as toilet paper. The equipment found around the body gives us many clues as to his way of life. He was well prepared for climbing through the mountains. He had a jacket made from deer hide and goat hide, and a pair of shoes made from the skin of both goat and bear, and then insulated with plant material. Over the top of it all, he was wearing a cape made from grass and bast, which is made from bark. This could give us a clue as to his occupation. In fact, this cape resembles capes still worn by shepherds in the Balkans, and the site where he was found is near an area where shepherds traditionally take their flocks in summer. Yet the theory that he was a shepherd has little else to support it. It's been proposed that he was a hunter, due to the fact that he was carrying a bow and some arrows. Some earlier ideas that he was a warrior or a trader of flint have been abandoned for lack of any supporting material. The Iceman was found lying on a large rock, and so it was believed initially that he had fallen asleep on the rock and then died. However, the consensus now is that he died nearby and then floated into that position during periods when the ice thawed. There are several indicators for this. First, the awkward position of his left arm. Second, the position of his right hand, which was stuck under another rock. Third, the missing outer layer of skin. And the fact that some of his belongings were a few meters from the body. Despite these interesting findings, there are still many things that we don't know about the Iceman. What was he doing up there high in the mountains, apparently by himself? Did he die from exhaustion and cold while running away from danger? We may never know exactly what the cause of death was, because this would require an autopsy, which has not been allowed as it would cause too much damage to the corpse. When the body was first removed, it was thought to be that of a missing mountain climber, and a number of people disturbed the site, wrecking a good part of the evidence in the process. But hopefully, with further research, we will be able to solve some of the mysteries that still surround the Iceman, who's already taught us so much about the way of life at that time.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
So guys, don't forget like, subscribe and share my YouTube channel and my Facebook page. IELTS updates and recent exams. For more updates related to recent IELTS exam writing as topics, listening, reading, practice test, and speaking, you cut guesswork. Please guys, participate in everyday new IELTS listening and reading practice tests to achieve your desired band score in your actual IELTS exam. For more IELTS material, visit my official website www.ieltsupdatesandrecentexams.com. The link is given below in the description. If you need PDF files of latest IELTS material, then please join my Telegram channel. So guys, please write your score below the comment section. Again, thanks for listening. God bless you all guys. Stay tuned, stay safe.